And that very well could have been, I'm not saying it's the full thing, but it certainly could have been part of the catalyst that made the Wall Street crash happen in '08.
Well, there's also the fact that the Taliban was cutting it off in 2000, 2001, and you had the crash in 2001.
Yep. Notice how every time the drugs get cut off, it seems Wall Street crashes shortly thereafter.
Well, you're right on that front again, but how can they just be in Reuters saying we're not going to eradicate any poppy fields? I mean, how obvious is that?
Well, it's the old thing of the way we fight the wars today. You know, sometimes the people you get in bed with are worse than the people you're fighting.
You're absolutely right. You know, Governor Jesse Ventura, I have a lot of questions that I want to ask here in my list, but going out to break on this short segment, what else do you want to relay to this audience that you think is important?
Well, again, just to be vigilant and pay attention and to question your government at all times, because it needs to be questioned. Right now, you know, like I said, it should be clear to everyone that Barack Obama's not in charge. I don't believe that he is now, because you see everything that he ran on, he hasn't come through on virtually anything. He's now in the opposite camp, really. And it's almost like he arrived there with this fresh, clean agenda, and it was like they took him to the woodshed and told him, well, you might be the president, but you don't run things.
Well, certainly. Plus, they financed him. They financed McCain. No matter who gets in, they control him.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. You know, you look at Obama's biggest contributor was Goldman Sachs. And they're the ones that, what is it, the last 5 or 6 Department of Treasury secretaries have all come out of there?
And absolutely. And then you look at Chile, Iceland, you look at Greece, you look at all these countries, first world, second world, they're all run by Goldman Sachs people. That's the key heart to this group. A ton of questions straight ahead for Governor Jesse Ventura. The book is a bestseller. Get it at Infowars.com and get your choice of a free film. We are live, ladies and gentlemen, Tuesday, the 6th day of April, 2010. Governor Jesse Ventura, an icon of true political independence in this country and worldwide, is our guest, and I'm really honored to have him and honored to count him as a friend. He's a great guy. He's for real. And I want to get into how did he get his TV show on air. We talked about this last time, and he marveled, but now we see the censorship of his book, no book reviews, even though it's number 4 on the New York Times bestseller list. How did that happen? We're going to talk about that in a moment. But first, Governor, I got an email from a lady saying, effective immediately, she's never listening to my radio show again because I played the gun pod footage from the Apaches, killing these reporters, shooting these kids, laughing about it, and then lying about it later. All these other massacre videos. Here's the New York Times today. U.S. forces horrifying Afghanistan cover-up. Obviously, we're not saying the individual troops are all bad, but Pat Tillman went over there, found that it was a fraud, wrote letters home. That's a show you should do. I talked to some of his family. They wouldn't come on air. They believe it was a hit. The evidence came out. They did cover up the friendly fire. They killed him up at point-blank range, 3 shots in the head. I mean, as Fletcher Prouty wrote, and he ran Black Ops, we propped up the Soviets. We set it all up. It's staged. It's eating our entire system. Is it unpatriotic to criticize corrupt, illegal wars?
No, it's not. You know, we went through this in Vietnam. I would think that this country would have a little bit longer memory of the same type of affair took place in Vietnam, where you had the massacre at My Lai. You know, people, and believe me, I'm not blaming the soldiers, I'm blaming the politicians, because it's ultimately their fault. You know, war is the result of failed policy, failed politics, and the end result is war. And so when your politicians fail you, you go to war. And because of their failure, they put our young men and women into these wars. Well, what they did, of course, what they did is not good, but let's remember something. Some of these guys are on their 5th, 6th, and 7th tour over there. They've been hardened now. They've been changed. They are not the same people that left. Trust me on that. And so, war, there is nothing great and glorious about war. War is the worst thing man's ever come up with. And that's killing each other over what? Political reasons, religion, what whatever stupidity we might decide to go to war and murder each other over. And so, no, you are not wrong in showing this, because what's wrong is sheltering people from it. That's why these wars are going on, Alex, is because the American people have been sheltered. The media is not portraying what's happening over there, and they're not even showing the body bags when they come home.
Well, you're absolutely right. And you talked about Fletcher Prouty, who ran Black Ops in the Pentagon. That's on record, the liaison to the CIA. And he's documenting how they made the decision at the end of World War II to attack third world countries, to divide them, to never have an outcome, so the armaments industries could make a lot of money and get a lot of power. And then we sit here and say that's exactly what Afghanistan and Iraq are. We know this is the policy of divide and conquer. We know they're turning our country into a militarized surveillance police state, and it's our right as citizens to say that we don't want to be part of these illegal wars that George Washington said, you know, that we shouldn't be involved in foreign wars.
Well, again, I guess sometimes a war is justified, you know. There are occasions, you know, where a war you've got to go fight because there may be a tyrant like Adolf Hitler out there. And that type of situation. But ever since World War II, you cannot tell me one war that has been justified.
But you talked about it being a failed policy, failed from our perspective, but if we know they're premeditated to be quagmires to make money, then it's not a failed policy. You know, they say the war on drugs is a failure. There's more drugs, more people in prison. But for the big banks and the military-industrial complex, that's a success.
Oh, yeah, very much so. People need to always remember there are profiteers at war. There are people that wait for war because they become exceptionally wealthy when there's wars fought. And these are the people that lead, these are the lobbyists that get those secret team guys at that level of government to move forward. Like, here's what Prouty also brings out very clearly. He brings out the fraud of the CIA. We all believe the CIA is there to gather intelligence, right?
Yes.
Well, Prouty says that's about 10% of what they do. The other 90% is carrying out these military agendas and creating the wars.
And assassinations.
Yeah. Well, that's what helps create the wars. See, they were designed by Harry Truman to not set policy. They were supposedly to be there only to provide information for the president. And Allen Dulles, Prouty makes it very clear that Allen Dulles, and of course he's neck deep, a member of the Warren Commission and all that on Kennedy, Allen Dulles is the one that created today's CIA, this independent rogue outlaw state that is uncontrollable now even by our own government. They're on their own now. They're cowboys.
Where do you see this going? Because I have a Bloomberg report here in my stack where the federal government is telling private and public pension funds you must invest, quote, in failed banks, and now they're getting ready to go after people's pension funds. Are they trying to push the American people into some type of armed revolt?
I believe they're trying to destroy the middle class.
Absolutely, and why?
Because we're the only country that's ever really had one. That's always been the American dream, is that you can rise from poverty in this country and you can become a millionaire. Well, that dream is vanishing quickly. There is not going to be a middle class in about 15 years, I don't believe. There will just be rich and poor. And therefore, we will be like every other country around the globe. And maybe, Alex, it's being done to globalize Mexico, Canada, and us.
Absolutely. North American Union. That way people are so poor they can't ever resist the ruling class.
Well,
here's that Bloomberg article.
They got to bring us down to Mexico's level.
Oh, exactly. That's what the globalists say. In fact, there's a clip we have of Obama where he says, in this new world order, no nation can be above another. But that doesn't mean raise the third world. In the globalist documents, they want to lower everybody.
Yeah, no, they would rather lower us down to the third world level.
Unbelievable.
As opposed to raising up the third world to our level.
Let's read this Bloomberg headline for folks that are doubting me. Failed banks may get pension fund backing as FDIC seeks cash. The Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation is trying to encourage public retirement funds that control more than $2 trillion to buy all or part of failed lenders' assets, taking on a more direct role in propping up banking systems. And it talks about how the regulators are ordering them to do it. Since when do regulators order private and public pension funds to be invested in the failed banks?
And since when would you, with a clear conscience, want to invest in a failed bank?
Well, the government says, Jesse, they want to grab your 401k and give it to the bankers.
Well, I'll tell you, Alex, I don't know. Maybe they do want an on-the-street revolution.